would not be possible without the generous assistance and contributions from our sponsors today. And as I say their names, I know there are some of you in the crowd who belong to some of these groups. If you would please raise your hand or stand and be recognized, that would be awesome. Our sponsors for this event are Gold Mountain, California News Media, the Arts Council of Placer County, the Auburn Arts Commission, Auburn Community TV, and the City of Auburn. Thank you so much again. And also a big thank you to the Chapel of the Hills, a couple doors down, for generously letting us use their parking lot today. That was a big, big old help. Now today we are going to begin with some remarks from our president of the Gold Country Writers Writing Group, followed by a keynote presentation from one of our members, Joan Griffin. We will grant recognition to the 10 finalist entries with certifications or certificates, and present the Gold Coin Awards to third, second, and first place, along with an excerpt reading of their winning stories. And of course, there will be a post-ceremony reception afterwards. We would love to have you there. Now I'd like to invite to the stage Nicole Goldman, president of Gold Country Writers.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming and sharing our special day with us. I'd like to talk a little bit about Gold Country Writers. We are a registered nonprofit organization. We have a board and directors and a lot of volunteers. We have about 100 members, and all of them are interested in writing. In nonfiction, fiction, every genre you can think of, we have that. What we offer to our members is benefits like drop-in critiques. That's where people can bring 5 pages double-spaced of their work and get feedback from their peers on how to make their writing better. We also have 8 specialty spin-off groups, and those range from children's lit and young adult, evening mixed genre, that's the one we were talking about, science fiction and fantasy, memoir critique, memoir share, poetry, mystery and thriller, and inspirational. If you don't see something there that includes you, feel free to start your own group and we'll support that. We also have a mentoring program where we pair mentors and mentees to accomplish specific goals related to writing. We have speaker events every month that are open to the public and are free. Our upcoming speakers are October 15th, Anne DeVigo on creating fiction from real events, which might be relevant to today's nonfiction stories. November 19, we have Catherine Brandkamp on the creative impulse in an age of false perfection. In December, due to the holidays, we don't have a speaker, and we're using that day for drop-in critique. January 17, our speaker will be Matthew Minson on similarities in writing comedy and horror. For more information, follow us on Facebook or visit our website, goldcountries.com, goldcountrywriters.com, where you can also find our monthly newsletter called The Dispatch. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back to Jojo.
All right. Our esteemed speaker today has turned a lifetime of twists and turns, pivots in careers, and paths less traveled into deeply resonant writing. Her first book, Force of Nature, chronicles the lived adventure of 3 women hiking the John Muir Trail. Her current creative undertaking is another memoir, this time exploring the experience of being an adoptee and connecting to birth family. Here to shed light on turning the truth to turning the page is GCW's own Joan Griffin.
That was quite an introduction. Thank you. I almost didn't recognize myself. Hi. Congratulations first to all of the winners that we're going to be celebrating today. It's an honor to be a part of the same program with you. And thank you to the Gold Country Writers, not only for the last 10 years of my relationship with this group, but for this honor of coming and speaking with you. So thank you. Glad to be here. All right. My goal today is to leave you with a call to action to write your stories down, to unleash that inner storyteller. Sprinkled throughout this are several, what I hope are inspirational quotes, which you have a copy of, all of them and more in your program today. And we're going to start with one by one of my favorite of all time quotes by Muriel Rukeyser. The universe is made up of stories, not of atoms. And I firmly believe that. Once upon a time, long ago, in a faraway land, two dear friends and I set out to hike through the heart of the Sierra Nevada, the Range of Light, on the 200-mile John Muir Trail. It was a grand adventure, a huge challenge, and a joyous month immersed in the most beautiful place on earth. Afterwards, when I returned, changed and filled with awe, I wanted to share my experiences with everyone I cared about. I wanted to share the joy I felt, the beauty I witnessed, and my experiences of overcoming fears and obstacles to stand atop mountains and see forever. I wanted to share all my stories, so I ended up writing my adventure memoir, Force of Nature. What no one prepared me for was all the readers who have reached out to me in person or via email or my website to tell me that my story had inspired them. Some tell me their own stories of hiking when they were younger or with now gone spouses, lamenting that they can no longer hike in the mountains or carry a backpack. Others tell me that my story was the catalyst they needed in order to do what they've always only dreamed about, and now they've gotten a permit to hike in the Sierra backcountry. I was not prepared for the deeply personal responses of my readers. Writer Terry Pratchett tells us, people think that stories are shaped by people. In fact, it's the other way around. People are shaped by stories. Why do we write our stories? Why do we want to share our experiences with others? What's the value? I thought it was simply because I had a fun and exciting story to tell. But in the course of writing my story, remembering and reflecting on my experiences and feelings, I learned a lot about myself that I had not yet, even in my golden years, realized about myself. During the process of writing my book over the course of an entire decade, I discovered a new community of writers and other creatives. That community has enriched my life in ways I never expected, and I hope I have returned the favor. After publishing my memoir, I've met and gotten to know many wonderful and interesting people, hikers and readers, nature lovers and librarians, artists and book club members, both locally and across the country. Writing my stories literally changed my life in new and unexpected ways. Why should you write your stories? Because the world needs your stories. Author Philip Pullman tells us, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the things we need most in the world. Humans have been telling stories for tens of thousands of years, first around campfires and on the walls of caves. It began as oral tradition, but as soon as people invented a written language, they began to record their stories and pass them along. In fact, much of what we know about the history of humankind, we know because those stories outlasted those civilizations. Storytelling is part of our DNA. Humans are born storytellers. We almost can't help ourselves. We share every day. You'll never guess what happened to me today, we say at the dinner table with family, or on the telephone to a friend. We watch TV shows, movies, and cat videos. We read books and short stories and posts on social media. We consume stories like we consume food. Stories connect us to one another. Stories entertain us and inform us. Stories evoke emotions and preserve our memories. Stories even reveal universal truths and our own personal inner truths. Author Madeleine L'Engle wrote, "Stories make us more alive, more human, more courageous, and more loving." Years ago, I tried to convince my mom and dad to record their family stories because they lived such interesting lives. They always said, no one's going to be interested, our lives were ordinary, and so they never wrote them down. But they weren't ordinary, at least not for people who didn't live through the same era. For example, my paternal grandma, as a young teenager, moved with her farming family from the Midwest to California, one Quaker village to another, in 1906. They arrived just days after the 1906 earthquake, and because of all the chaos, they had to ride horses from San Francisco to the Imperial Valley and their new farm. My grandma always described that as one of the greatest adventures of her lifetime, but she never wrote it down, and I can't remember the details. My mother was born into a wealthy, oil-rich family in the mid-20s, but when the Depression hit and her dad died, they lost everything. They had to move from a giant Victorian into a single room in a hotel with a bathroom down the hall, and my grandma cleaned all the hotel rooms and hand wrote the restaurant menus for room and board. They lived in that one room for a decade. But they never wrote it down. And I wish I remembered the details. I've forgotten more than I remember. Author Faye Moskowitz says, "For who will testify? Who will accurately describe our lives if we do not do it ourselves?" I'm here today to convince you to tell your life stories, your true stories, to tell them so well that others will read them with interest. One of the fastest growing segments of the publishing business is memoir and other forms of narrative nonfiction. Memoir, like all narrative nonfiction, utilizes all the powerful storytelling techniques that novelists have been using and experimenting with for centuries. Characterization, setting, vivid sensory details, dialogue, action words, a story arc with conflicts, literary devices like metaphor, flashback, irony, suspense, and so much more. Memoir are true stories with a capital T, but they are also stories full of love and excitement, adventure and discovery, fear and heroism. But because memoir are personal stories, they're also full of the author's feelings and reflections on lessons learned and wisdom gained through living life. Anais Nin wrote, "We write to taste life twice, in the moment and in retrospect." So why should you write your stories? First and foremost, because it's fun. But writing your stories fosters self-knowledge, personal growth, and a sense of self-empowerment. Writing your stories builds empathy and connection with others, often inspiring those who face similar challenges or ambitions. Writing your stories creates a lasting testament to a life well lived, perhaps even a family legacy that fosters intergenerational bonds. And finally, writing your stories allows you to contribute to something larger than yourself, and promote social change by educating others and inspiring them to action. With that said, I'm going to read a little excerpt from my book. We've been hiking for about 25 days, and we've just done our longest, highest climb, and it's getting late, and it's getting dark, and we have to find a campsite. There aren't any official camping areas up this high, Cappy, my hiking partner, remembered from the guidebook. Let's just look for a flat spot, any flat spot. No sooner had those words been spoken than we came around a bend in the trail to find a nameless, shallow pond, just a dip in the rock floor, smaller than the average backyard swimming pool and not nearly as deep. It was surrounded and sheltered by vertical walls and large boulders. Beside it lay a flat, smooth space about the size and shape of my bedroom, perfect for our tent and its lean-to. I quickly removed my pack and took out my share of the tent. I looked up and gasped. The entire space was suddenly bathed in the spectacular orange and pink light of an intensifying alpenglow. Over the years, I have stood many an evening in the Sierra, admiring that spell cast by the sunlight's last hurrah, the way it first coats the whole west-facing mountainside with bright color while the rest of the world goes gray. As the long, unseen sun sinks below the sea, the colorful glow shrinks, its bottom line creeping up the mountain canvas like an upside-down hourglass filled with an ever-shrinking volume of salmon-colored sand until only the tip of the tallest peak remains in colored light. Finally, the color is completely extinguished as the last grains of glowing sand fall upward into the sky. As amazing as I find the alpenglow phenomenon every time I witness it, that night's experience was singular. Our little camping room was bathed in an alpenglow spotlight. We were immersed in pink and orange. The pond reflected it, the room's vertical walls and boulders glowed as though illuminated from within. It was like being inside a magical snow globe, filled not with white snow, but with glowing photons of fiery light that swirled all around us. We stopped our work to watch the colors and shadows shift and change around us like colorful fluids spreading and mixing and flowing away. Alpenglow is always fleeting. After too short a time, we stood witness as the darkness chased the last of the vivid colors across the space to leave us behind in the dullness of the night's full shadow. I blinked my eyes. I didn't even know that was a thing you could experience, I said. We stood in near complete darkness, punctuating the silence with words that only served to expose our tongue-tied awe. There really are no words in English to describe the experience clearly. I wonder if the Tibetans or the Nepalese, who live high in the Himalayas, have words in their languages to describe what we saw and felt that night. Thank you all.
Now that's some inspiring stuff right there. Let's give it up one more time for Joan Griffin. Now, inspiration was nowhere near in short supply when it comes to the submissions we received this year. Spanning subjects from nail-biting natural disasters to adventures abroad, our finalists truly understood the assignment. I'd like to invite our president up once again to get our recognitions underway.
Thank you. I feel like I'm just coming off of witnessing the most spectacular sunset. That is the power of writing. Thank you so much, Joan. Before I talk about the entrance, I'd like to talk about the process for the contest. Our goal was to be open, fair, unbiased, and to do that, we had a series of anonymous judges. The judges don't even know who each other are. We don't know how many judges there are. The criteria for judging was published for all to see in our newsletter and on the website. It was called the Judging Rubric Overview. It identified 12 categories, including story beginning, arc, the ending, characters, dialogue, spelling, grammar. It tried to be encompassing all the aspects of a story. When a story came in, a coordinator first examined it to make sure it conformed with all the rules. The rules were Times New Roman font, 12-point, double-spaced, page numbers on each page, story title on each page, 1-inch margins, and the author's name was not to appear. After the story passed that criteria, it was passed to more than one judge. It went to 2 judges, each to score independently according to the rubric. What we showed you was the 12 categories. What we didn't show you was the 5 very detailed scoring criteria within each of those 12 categories and the scoring, because we don't want people just to kind of write to the exam kind of thing. So the judges' scores came in and were averaged. In the case, if there was a disparity of judges' scores, which happened, I think, 3 times, we called in a 3rd judge to also independently score that story. We threw out the anomaly scores and averaged the 2 that were remaining. With all that, what we came up with is numerical rankings. We then sorted by number, easy, and passed the top 6 stories to a final judge, also anonymous, to do the ranking for us. And from that, we identified the 10 finalists and the top 3 of them. And I would now like to invite to join me on the stage to be recognized as one of the top 10 finalists. Andrew Barclay, for his story, El Encierro. Please come up. Jojo will hand you a copy. Up the Alcan by Daniel Carrig. And unfortunately, Daniel sent word that he cannot join us today. Celebrating a Celebrity Moose by Heidi Curry. Heidi, The Leap by Kiera Garcia. Love Kiera. Finding Luba by Trudy Gardner. My First Omelette by Chris Massey. And Chris could not be here today. 4 Minutes by Jolie Roberts. Thank you all. We're going to line them up on the stage if you want to take photos. That's great. And then you can talk to all these people downstairs during the reception. And I'd like to read the names and stories, and people can hold up their hand, identify themselves. Andrew Barclay, El Encierro. Up the Alcan by Daniel Carrig, absent. Celebrating a Celebrity Moose by Heidi Curry. Yay. The Leap by Kiera Garcia. Finding Luba by Trudy Gardner. My First Omelette by Chris Massey, who could not be here. And 4 Minutes by Jolie Roberts. A hand to our finalists. Photo.
Thank you.
Okay, and I invite you to leave the same way you came. Safely. We have stairs here. And now I would like to announce our 3rd place winner with her story, Queen of Fate by Janine Escaler Cato. And Janine is going to read to you the first page of her story. So we're asking the third place and second place finalists to read the first page of their story. The overall winner will win the entire story, but we invite everyone to sample the stories, talk to the authors in the reception downstairs. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, let me say that I'm just honored to be part of the 10. So I'm just so happy to be here, and thank you for being here to honor all of us. My story is about the queens in my life, those women who have always inspired me along the way. And I hope you have a chance to read the story because it's about a queen, an African-American queen who came along at a time in my life when I needed to learn how to be a queen. But I just want to say real quick that I want to dedicate this story to someone that we knew in this club, Brenda Sue Pignata, who left us in February. And she was a queen in our group, and she inspired me to keep writing and to keep telling my stories. And Brenda Sue, this is for you, Queen of Fate. So I'll just read the first page. I wish I could read other parts of it, but that's life. This is for you, Brenda. Stumbling into an empty compartment, I dropped my backpack on the window seat of a Venice train bound for Paris. Italian men in tight, shiny suits stared at me through the opaque glass door. I whispered under my breath, "Please move along." As a recent college graduate in the summer of 1976, I had saved for years to take this European sojourn on my own. When I glanced up, a tall, ebony beauty blinded me with her smile. I felt bathed in relief when she stepped through the sliding door to join me. "You're an American!" My unabashed glee caught her off guard. She giggled. "How did you know?" "Your smile is distinctly American." I motioned for her to sit. "I'm Hazel. I'm returning to the States from the Soviet Union as a foreign exchange student from the University of Texas." She offered her slender hand in greeting. I clasped my hand in hers and introduced myself. "I just graduated from a California State University. This trip is a present to myself before I begin my teaching credential programs." We settled into our seats and discussed similar career paths in education. However, the conversation centered around world cultures made me feel more connected to this African-American woman. Hazel explained, "My family migrated from the deep South into Texas after the Civil War. My grandparents raised me on stories their parents told them about being house slaves on Georgia plantations. Our past is a blessing compared to the past of most of my people. The white plantation owners were better to my people. My ancestors raised their children." And the story goes on. I just want to tell you that we ran into some South African men who were chastising her for being with me, a white woman. And because the Soweto riots had just broken out in South Africa, and it was about how she handled their hatred and taught them a new way of thinking and taught me how to be a queen. Thank you.
As our third place winner, Janine has a certificate with her name and also a bag of gold coins, since we are Gold Country Writers, for $50. We will escort her through the parking lot, so there's no mugging. I'd like to announce now our second place story, which is The Hero of Bull Creek Bridge by Della Claver. And we've invited Della to read the first page of her story. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, it's a good thing I have it written down because I'm almost speechless with excitement. Splat! The little tree frog came flying out of the old swamp cooler, hitting me right in the face before bouncing off and landing on the kitchen floor, where it sat, looking stunned. "Ooh, so gross," I proclaimed, wiping slime off my cheek. Grab Rennie, my 8-year-old big sister Marilyn commanded as she rounded the corner to see what was grossing me out. I grabbed Rennie's collar just as his nose bumped the frog, sending it hopping across the linoleum floor. Marilyn swooped it in and captured it mid-hop and crooned into her cupped hands. "You're okay, little froggy. At least you came through in one piece. Open the door, May-May." As usual, when she used her pet name for me, I ran to do my sister's bidding. I considered it bossing me around if she used my real name, and I would obstinately ignore her. Leaving Rennie inside, we made our way down the front porch steps and onto the lawn. Mom looked up from picking green beans in the garden across the gravel driveway. "What do you have there?" "Another frog came out the cooler," we both chimed in unison. Marilyn set the frog free, where it quickly disappeared among the tomato vines. Mom stood with her bucket full of garden vegetables. She smiled and swiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her gloved hand. "Whew, it's hot. I'm ready for a break. Your dad is knocking off early today, and we are going swimming at Cow Creek. Shirley and the kids are coming too." "Dad's taking us swimming?" I grabbed my sister's hands and we danced around, our flip-flops slapping against our heels as we jumped up and down. What had started to be just another long, boring, hot summer day had just become filled with fun possibilities.
Della Corvair is the winner of $75 in gold coins. I would now like to announce the grand winner of the 2025 Nonfiction Short Story Contest and welcome to the stage Barbara Young. Barbara has been invited to read her entire story.
Well, this is a truly amazing experience for me. It is a first short story contest that I entered in, and to be a finalist, I was just thrilled. I don't know if I can read. I've got to breathe, you guys. So this story is about a time in my life I lived my dream, living in the Caribbean for 15 years. Hurricanes were a natural thing to deal with, but I had lived in Florida, and so I was accustomed to that. This particular storm that I wrote about is, you'll see, it's very heartfelt and a very big time of growth for me going through this storm. It's called A Light in the Storm. Mayday, Mayday, sailing vessel Resa in Princess Bay, St. John. 4 on board, we're adrift, and my wife's fingers got cut off. She's bleeding a lot. The booming male voice blared over my mobile marine VHF radio. I sat straight up, lying on the couch. The mayhem he described was happening in an inlet just across Coral Bay from me. Bertha, the first hurricane of the 1996 season, forced everyone in the Virgin Islands to hunker down for safety. Her winds buffeted my house, the rain hammered the tin roof, and for me, every noise receded into the silence that followed when no one answered his call. I stepped up. Resa, you must stop the bleeding. Hold direct pressure. Can you hear me? Copy, he said. Do you have her fingers? Negative. Still adrift? Boat's bucking hard, but the reserve anchor seems to be holding, he said with a momentary relief in his voice. I was on deck of our boat. Winds were blowing like stink, roaring through where my family and I had anchored to ride out the storm. It got totally crazy. There are children on board? I asked. Yes, 6 and 8. We've been cruising. We're on our way back home to Sweden, he continued. Our 45-foot sailboat got tossed like in a washer. The lines got tangled with other boats. We could have been smashed up or dragged under. The lines were so tight I couldn't uncleat them. My wife got a knife to cut the anchor line. That's when it happened. I could hear the fear of losing his wife in his voice, but he had to know. No emergency vehicles can travel in these conditions, but I'm an ER nurse here on the island of St. John. I'll stay on this channel with you. The storm knocked out the island's power and all the phones. Our medical services were not reachable by VHF radio from my location. With a radio in each hand, I successfully hailed Virgin Islands Search and Rescue Visar network for help. The network's hub was on Tortola, a British island across the international pirate waterway of the Sir Francis Drake Passage. Mac at Visar answered, "We'll back you up with first aid advice, even CPR instruction to her husband if necessary. But a rescue is impossible during the storm." This news prompted a buzz among the boaters and radio operators throughout the British and American islands, strategizing any possible rescue. After an enthusiastic volley, without achieving a solution, the radio went quiet. Harsh crackling static interrupted the radio silence, then the faint voice of a boater near Virgin Gorda, some 20 miles east, gave a desperate report. Boats pitching and rolling, the masses hitting the water. Yikes, lightning! His transmission dropped. He's in the eye wall. I confirmed this by correlating his reported indicators with the last storm coordinates that I had plotted from the radio weather updates. Minutes drifted until the same boater said, "Wind's shifting, I see blue sky." He made it through the wall. That's the most dangerous part of a hurricane. I exhaled the breath that I was holding. More optimistic reports came in by radio. Finally, another voice said, "Blue sky over East End St. John." Bertha had embraced the territory and the Sir Francis Drake Passage within the calm center within her eye. Yes, light in the storm. Could we pull off a rescue? Going outside during the eye of the storm was beyond risky. Any attempted rescue would be a race against time and rely on the reports of this moment-to-moment tracking of the eye by this international network. Mac announced, "Conditions aren't dependable enough for us to send a boat across the passage." Then he added, "It's up to you, nurse." A glint of sunlight seeped between the boards that protected the windows of my house. I organized my flood of thoughts to work out a plan with Hal, my boyfriend, who was sheltering with me. The road may be impassable, but I have tools in but I have tools, including a chainsaw and survival gear, in my Jeep. Hal said, "I'll drive, you tend to her." We can't get to her boat, so she must get to land. We ran the plan by Mac, and he urged, "You gotta go now." I radioed Riesa for approval. He said, "I'll get Ella to the dinghy dock in 20 minutes, he committed. Hal and I bounced like popcorn as my bright yellow Jeep navigated the loose rocks and straddled the rushing water and the ruts along the road from Lower Bordeaux Mountain. The flood water met the undercarriage as we drove across the flats of Estate Carolina. In the puddled lot by the dinghy dock, a lone blanket figure seemed to float toward us. I hopped out of the Jeep. "Ella, I'm Barbara." She was scary pale. A blood-stained towel wrapped her right hand. As she grabbed around my waist, her small body weakened and leaned against me. You're my angel," she whispered. My eyes stung, then flooded with tears as she said with her voice trembling, "My husband brought me ashore by dinghy. He had to leave me there to go back to the boat and get my children who were alone. I don't know when I'll see them again." We lifted Ella into the open-air Jeep. She nestled into the blanket-padded cargo area. I covered her with a tarp to keep her dry, and I gave her some water, ginger snaps, and a barf bag. A flushing tingle came over me. Bertha's keeping her eye on us. At our location, the weather was still fairly clear, but an odd cello cast had veiled everything. "Mac, we're loaded and we're ready to head to the clinic by land," I said over the VHF radio. "It's looking real dark southeast of Virgin Gorda, but the passage remains clear," he confirmed. Hal and I locked eyes. We both said 30 minutes. That was our guess for the return of the storm winds, barely enough time to drive the 7 curvy mountainous miles to the clinic. Ella squeezed my hand as Hal sped up, leaving the marina on the steep centerline road. At the top of the climb, about 1,000 feet above sea level, the usually picturesque view behind us was almost grayed out. Skittering puffs of wind rippled the water's surface in the bay. We continued to the other side of the mountain where the road descended into Reef Bay. Despite the dense tropical forest alongside the road, the winds began gusting against the Jeep and continued to taunt as Bertha's patience seemed to be running out. Heavy raindrops flew in all directions, spattering our faces. Hal and I both put on our swim masks and snorkels to be able to breathe and see. Hal's grip blanched while holding the steering wheel steady until the last turn into the parking lot. Just after getting Ella inside the ER, Bertha let loose the fury she'd been holding back. I knew there wasn't a surgery suite in that clinic, and I even knew there was no surgeon on the entire island. But our blessing was that Dr. Barron was on duty. She had the stitching skills of a plastic surgeon. I assisted Dr. Barron in the cleaning and closure of Ella's wounds. The weather was so dangerous, Hal and I couldn't drive back home, so we stayed at the clinic the rest of the storm. After Ella's condition stabilized, she courageously told me what happened. It was so hard to see. The rain and sea spray were blowing in my face, but I felt the release of the line as soon as my cleaver hit it. Then somehow, the next thing I knew, everything was red. I was helpless. I watched my fingers fly into the water with the severed rope. She sobbed. I think I threw up then. I did this with my own knife. What if I can't ever chef again? The ache in my heart for her deepened as she wrestled with the guilt and sadness. In the many letters I received from Ella over the next several years, her gratitude and family stories were uplifting. She also shared, "My children talk about their sailing adventures as happy memories. My daughter wants to be a nurse on an island." In her last letter, she wrote, "I have a new thumb. My surgeon was amazed with what you and Dr. Barron did, especially in such dire circumstances, and that I never got an infection. He transplanted one of my big toes to where my old thumb used to be. I'm cooking again." Ella and I met where purpose and need were all that mattered. She was courageous and trusted me when there was little hope of rescue. She held steady through the ordeal. She went on to regain her joy. She overcame her disability, and she returned to the career that she loved. Ella is my hero. Thank you all.
Barbara Young with Light in the Storm. Thank you all for your speakers.
Pause for glamour shots.
Right. And that marks yet another incredible short story contest. Let's give one more round of applause for all of those that made it possible, the submitters, our sponsors, all of you in this room today. I'd now like to invite you all to join us downstairs in the Rose Room for our celebrations reception. There will be light refreshments, a bingo icebreaker game, as well as book sales and signings by Joan Griffin. Thank you all so much again for coming and supporting us here today.